We're back on the beanbag, y'all! Why? Well, because I just watched Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance. I am a huge Dark Crystal fan, but a prequel? Really? Can this 10-part series from Netflix do the original justice? I'm Kris Carr, and today I'm talking to you about Netflix's Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance.
Oh, yeah.
Before we go back several trine for this tale, I want to thank all of our awesome supporters on Patreon, especially our super nerd sponsor of the day, Ronnie M. Thanks to heroes of the internet like Ronnie, we get to binge and tell you what's worth tuning into. If you want to help, head on over to our Patreon page and see if a donation tier works for you. We'll thank you with shout-outs, patches, behind-the-scenes looks, and more. If you can't give us your monies, that's okay. Liking, sharing, and subscribing are awesome ways to show your support. For the purposes of this review, I'll leave all the spoilers for the second half. So if you haven't seen Age of Resistance yet, no fear. I will not ruin the show for you. When I do venture into spoiler territory, I will give you a massive warning. Song, can we do some crazy graphics or something? Yeah? Okay, cool. Don't say I didn't warn you. On to Thra! The Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance delivers on its promise of being an epic fantasy tale. It honestly feels akin to Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. And it's all done almost entirely with puppets. As we all know, Age of Resistance is set before the events of Dark Crystal, the movie. This time, we're getting a lot more emphasis placed on Thra and its politics. Now, I'm honestly not usually one for prequels. You know more or less where the story's going, so what's the point? But if you're a fan of the channel, you know that I am a sucker for lore and history. This series delivers on that tenfold, but also weaves a narrative tale that is so intriguing and filled with fully dimensional characters that you are absolutely sucked into the story. In the series, we learn that there are 7 clans of Gelfling: the Sprighton, the Sifa, the Deucen, the Stone in the Wood, the Drenchen, the Vapra, and the Groton. Turns out, these various types of Gelfling harbor quite a bit of prejudice towards one another, something probably harbored and fostered by their overlords, the Skeksis.
You'll die for this impudence, you noxious Gelfling!
A handful of Gelfling learn of the treachery of the Skeksis. Rianne, a brave castle guard, Breya, a princess with a thirst for knowledge, and Deet, a kind-hearted animal lover who has lived with her kind underground. The show builds from the movie and prequel novels, but these new heroes written specifically for the show are the heart of the series. Traveling with them is my favorite character and the show's MVP, Hup, a podling who aspires to be a paladin. On the villainous side, we of course have the Skeksis, who are a fantastic combination of disgusting, terrifying, and hysterical. Let's talk about this killer voice cast. Everyone really delivers, but of course there are a few standout performances. Rianne is played by Taron Egerton, who I've loved in voiceover roles before, and feel just as enamored with him here. Anya Taylor-Joy of Split fame plays bookish Breya perfectly. She gives her so much emotional depth in some heart-wrenching scenes, something desperately needed to buy into the story with those stoic Gelfling puppet faces not giving you much. Rounding out our trio is Nathalie Emmanuel from Game of Thrones playing sweet little Deet. Deet is so insanely likable that you as an audience are so invested in her and her friends. And that's a lot to do with Nathalie's delivery.
My name's Deet. I'm a Gelfling.
Oh, afala abo vas, Lady Deet.
I had heard Simon Pegg was in this series and had no idea who he was until I got to the end credits. He was voicing the Chamberlain. His portrayal of Skeksil is spot on and practically indistinguishable from the original voice. That's incredibly impressive when you consider how distinct that character's tone is with all its vocal tics. Voiceover god Mark Hamill is of course impressive as the scientist, and getting to hear his maniacal laughter is always a treat. Jason Isaacs, aka Lucius Malfoy, is delightfully evil as the Emperor, a character we didn't get to know in the original movie since he died within the first few minutes. You can tell that Jason is reveling in this over-the-top evil role. The actor who steals the show, though? Andy Samberg. Playing opposite Bill Hader, Samberg delivers a hysterical performance as the Skeksis known as the Heretic, winning us over with his impatience, his operatic performances, and his theatrical delivery of Thra's history.
We called ourselves Skeks.
In the original film, the Skeksis seem to want essence and remain youthful for the sake of vanity, or perhaps a fear of death. Age of Resistance explores that much further, showing that the Skeksis have an intense fear of death, and that the false narrative of their immortality is pertinent to them maintaining control of Thra. Each episode is truly a feast for the eyes. The world is so completely visualized and unique, and downright terrifying. And honestly, a few times I thought, do we really want to save Thra? This place is a nightmare. The creepy and sometimes downright violent moments need to be mentioned. Much like the original film, this might be intense for young children, despite the TV PG rating. I'm assuming it got that because it's portraying felt-on-felt crime. Jim Henson's viewpoint for the original film was to create a Grimm's fairy tale-like world, and to remind the audience that it was okay to be scared. It's okay and normal for kids to be scared.
Hang on!
Sure, a lot of these creatures are cute, but there are deep, dark, and profound themes in Age of Resistance, and a nostalgia factor to boot if you watched the original as a kid. The series feels Tolkien-esque. There are tragic deaths. There's epic sacrifice. There are battles and fights that will put you on the edge of your seat because you sort of forget it's puppets. The main theme of this show is that death is inevitable and necessary. The film gave us a world that was strange and wondrous, but superficial. You just can't go in depth in 90 minutes. This show allows us to see a more fully realized world. There's mythology, social structures, rituals that all color and complete Thra in a way we haven't had access to before. Case in point, dream fasting. It was a great device in the film that allowed characters to get their backstories out of the way and create intimacy quickly, without cheapening anyone's relationship. Here, the device is used much in the same way, connecting characters and bonding them in a fast but understandable way, but also showing how such a gift would affect the Gelfling society. Committing crimes is pretty tough if you can mind meld with a jury of your peers. The All-Madra matriarchal system and the various clans were fascinating to learn about as well. We're never bogged down with the information though. It's weaved into the exposition in a way that's accessible without being overly explanatory. The writers really built on the solid foundation they were given. Age of Resistance was committed to maintaining Henson's legacy and delivering a product that was executed like the original. The details are insane. The end product perfectly blends the grotesque, the mystical, the macabre, and the magical. 95% of production was shot on real-life sets with puppets, with the occasional use of CGI enhancement. Well, the CGI doesn't always blend well, like when Laura's digital rather than practical. And the Gelfling faces still aren't as expressive as one would like. They've been improved upon tremendously, and do appear more vibrant and lifelike. Deet, in particular, is incredibly well designed. The Doosan Gelfling were also really interesting to see on screen. As I mentioned, Laura didn't always shine, but what an incredibly cool concept! When done as a practical puppet, Laura was probably one of my favorite characters to grace the screen. I'd also suggest you watch the series with subtitles. I usually do that anyway because of working for Nerdwire, but it definitely helps here when Hup goes back and forth from Podling speak to English. Or Thronian, I guess? If subs don't bug you, throw them on. Now those tiny issues aside, this is a tremendous series that I think will be a must-watch for most. If you like Henson Studios, if you love fantasy, if you love epic storytelling, if you just like fun stories of good and evil, this is for you. With a mix of family and political themes thrown into the mix, I honestly don't know who this show isn't for, so you should give it a fair shake. Now, with that out of the way, I want to delve into spoiler territory. This is where I'm going to talk specifics about the season and what to expect from season 2, should we get it. So, GTFO if you haven't watched. Are they gone? Okay, cool. Spoilers. As I predicted in my Dark Crystal Crash Course video, Aughra had a lot more screen time this go. Her bringing the Gelfling together, her sacrifice to save the Gelfling, and being reborn. Oh yeah, we need to talk about that. How crazy was Aughra being birthed out of the hunter after he died because his counterpart the archer killed himself by throwing himself off a cliff? Duh! But I mean, see, this is why people under 7 probably shouldn't watch it. But it was so cool!
Mother Aughra, are you all right?
No, I just came back from the dead. Not easy. Help me.
Because we know what Jen has to do in order to restore balance to Thra, it seemed like the dual glaive was a bit of a red herring at first. So it was wonderful to see that the blades were actually housing the crystal shard that will restore the Crystal of Truth. Obviously, in the following season, or seasons to come, we'll see how the Gelfling deal with this shard. Remember, in the movie, Aughra just has a bunch of shards thrown together. She currently is such an integral part of the Resistance, I'm interested to see how she lost track of things. Of course, the day was won thanks to the heroic efforts of Deet. After accepting the powers of the Sanctuary Tree and gaining the ability to heal those corrupted by the Darkening, Deet is able to take on the Skeksis when they try to use more of that Darkening power against our heroes. It looks like Deet, though, now causes death to plant life wherever she goes. This is heartbreaking for our little flower child. And what about her and Rianne? Homie loses 2 girls in one series? No. I bet our guy is gonna try and save Deet and rid her of this corruption. Lastly, we saw the first garment. We know those were built to decimate the Gelfling, so Season 2 will definitely have these creatures literally rolling out. I loved how they handled creating this hybrid beast. But what's really upsetting, though, is that we end the season pretty victorious. And then are reminded that the Gelfling genocide is still inevitable. Here's to hoping we get to explore Thrall for a little while longer before we come to that harrowing part of the saga. Of course, this is just one gal's opinion on the show. What did you think of Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance? What do you think will happen in Season 2? Let me know down below. For more videos, click to the left of my face or check us out on Roku or Plex. Thanks again to our amazing sponsors on Patreon. Thank you for watching. See you, Space Cowboy.